I've been making videos on the internet for over 12 years, and after buying and selling, no joke, hundreds of lenses, I have found that in most cases, 2 lenses will cover 90% of a filmmaker or YouTuber's needs. In this video, I'll show you the 2 lenses I use most, and I'll help you figure out what 2 lenses will serve you best, all while trying to stay on a budget here. So in most cases, and for most people, these 2 lenses we'll be talking about consist of a zoom lens and a prime lens. A zoom lens being a lens that has multiple focal lengths to choose from, while a prime is a single focal length, like 50 or 35. Before we get to the exact lenses, I want to let you know that this video is not sponsored by anyone, but it is supported by those of you who have purchased my camera guides and LUTs. Check the link in the description to learn more, and thank you guys so much for the support. Alright, so the first of 2 lenses I use all of the time is a standard range zoom lens. In my case, the Tamron 28-75 f2.8. Now I shoot on Sony full frame cameras, but you can easily find standard 24-70 lenses for any mount out there. If you want to save some money, I would suggest looking at Sigma or Tamron. Standard zooms from the big boys like Canon and Sony, etc. get pretty expensive pretty fast. Also make sure you get a lens that has a constant aperture of f2.8. Slower lenses, while cheaper, won't be as flexible, and again, the goal is to have 2 great lenses that do just about everything you need. So why this lens when zooms come in so many different ranges? For me, the focal range covers just about everything I need. I can put the standard zoom on my camera and capture a ton of content without having to switch lenses. What I really love about this Tamron in particular is the size and price. Since it's a 28-75 and not a 24-70, Tamron was able to keep the size and weight down. Here it is next to my Canon 24-70 f2.8 for reference. Price is also a huge factor. New and especially used prices are great on this thing. There are 2 versions of this lens, the original and the G2. I have the original version, and you can find this thing for under $600 on eBay used, which is phenomenal, or for I believe around $800 you can pick one up brand new. The next lens I use constantly for video is a prime lens, specifically a 35mm f1.8. I have found of all of the focal lengths, I usually find myself ending up on a fast 35mm prime. The field of view just feels right on so many different shots, and if I need something wider or longer, my standard zoom can pick up the slack. The fast aperture of f1.8 also gives me plenty of shallow depth of field and saves me a lot of money compared to 1.4. For example, here's a price comparison between those 2 options from Sony. As an example, this shot that I have for like all of my videos is using a 35mm at f1.8, so you can get an idea of this kind of medium wide shot, what you could get when it comes to shallow depth of field with a wall, I don't know, 10 feet behind me or so. Now I shoot on a full frame camera, and if you're going to be using something like a crop sensor camera, you might want to consider something slightly wider, maybe a 30mm or a 28 or 24mm. Since you're dealing with a cropped sensor, you might want a little more field of view. Most camera brands sell a decent 35mm at f1.8, so that shouldn't be hard to find. And you can also look at third parties to save a little bit of money. For example, again, if you're dealing with crop sensor cameras, Sigma has some awesome, tiny, as you can see here, little crop sensor lenses, and they have a 30mm, a 16mm. So these are great if you want a little wider field of view, and also something that's really fast at f1.4 and just really small and adorable. Now these 2 lenses are what work for me, but you may have completely different needs. The point of this video is to show that with 2 and maybe 3 lenses, you can film and capture everything you need. You don't have to have bags and crates and cases filled with lenses. And yes, more lenses mean more options, but as someone who has owned a ton of lenses, what ends up happening is most of them stay on the shelf. You might grab it once or twice a year, but you go back to your old faithful set of lenses because you'll use them. You know they're going to capture the shots that you need. So don't feel like you have to go out and buy a ton of lenses. As we've talked about, I think 2 is kind of the sweet spot. 3, you're looking really, really good. If you're starting out, I would recommend you really think about what you're going to be filming and base your lens decisions off of that. I have found that a zoom lens and a prime lens make a great combination, and you can of course customize that. Maybe you're an event filmmaker and you're going to lean toward a 70-200 and a 24-70. Maybe you shoot weddings in something like a 16-35, a 70-200, and then a prime lens for a more shallow depth of field is going to work better for you. Or if you were like me when I was starting out and had pretty much no money, I had a kit lens and a nifty 50, and that got the job done until I was able to afford nicer lenses. There are several other great reasons to stick with just a couple of lenses. The first is packing. It is so much nicer just having a few lenses in your bag along with your camera. Nothing's worse than packing a ton of lenses just to only use a handful when you go out to shoot. Another great reason to have just a few lenses is decision fatigue. The more options you have, the more decisions you have to make, and when you remove all of that by giving yourself just a couple of tools to use, you spend less time having to switch up lenses and choose which one to put on your camera, and more time actually filming. So hopefully this video helps those of you getting started. And hey, if you're watching this and you have a ton of lenses, maybe it's time to sell some lenses and use that capital for something else. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What focal lengths or lenses do you find yourself using again and again? I'll have links to the lenses I've mentioned down in the description. And if you enjoyed this video, consider supporting the channel with camera guides and LUTs. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.